And here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this wonderful world of ours. This is Trina Paulus's weekly program, and it's really a high spot during the week for me and possibly for others as well, because Trina has just lived through so many wonderful experiences and has such an understanding of the world in a very special way, a way that, for example, brought the book Hope for the Flowers to bear. And this week, I know, Trina, you have some more things to share, and the topic today is Lent. Now,
Yeah.
this is a topic that is near and dear to you, and I'd like to find out more about what you have to say about it. So please continue.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, this is Lent. This is the Monday of the second week of Lent. And each day of these 40 days has special Lenten readings that are almost classic. They don't change quite as much as the other ones do. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about it. This is where now we spent some time, those of you who followed me before, on Advent and darkness and the coming of light into Christmas and Epiphany. We focused on that cycle, the darkness and light cycle, night and day cycle. Now we're in the death to resurrection cycle. That's what Lent is really about. It's the time of growth, new growth, going deep with your roots into the earth and sprouting up again with newness. And Easter and Passover and these spring festivals are all meant to be related to this profound mystery, which in the Northern Hemisphere corresponds so beautifully to the physical world. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's kind of the reverse. They're going into summer right now. They're into spring and they're into summer, but such is life. I'm in the Northern Hemisphere and my feet and arms, hands are still so cold. And I look forward to the warmer weather very much. So, Lent. The official beginning of Lent used to be the first Sunday, which was going into the desert with Jesus for the 40 days. Those are 40 days from. And then, since we didn't fast on Sundays, they added from Ash Wednesday to that Sunday as new days of Lent. So Ash Wednesday is now the beginning of Lent. And the theme of Lent is fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. And the idea came and is developed is that the fast of the rich should be the feast of the poor. So what you save by fasting, which is much more extreme for my tradition, which is Catholic in the past, you were supposed to give that as alms to help feed the poor. And right now I'm basically fasting, and I hope I can keep it up on water, at least on Fridays, just water. And I think of those mothers in Gaza and those people in Gaza who have not had food or water for a long time. And if they do get some water, it's contaminated. And the sadness of all that is, and I can't reach out to them that way, but I think right now maybe is the time to share that I feel so privileged that right now I now have a Hebrew translation that a mother has volunteered to make over a period of 2 years and has sent it to me now. So I'm now getting people who read the Hebrew well to check it for me. So anybody who's really terribly interested in this, let me know. And someone else has donated the money to get a nice Arabic translation. And that's been a dream of mine for a long time, to publish the Hebrew and the Arabic at the same time if possible. And if not quite at the same time, shortly thereafter. And so that's a high priority for me right now that I'm working on. And along with that, I want to publish the Iranian, which is Persian or Farsi. It's the same language, Persi, Farsi, because it has been translated many years ago as an underground bestseller in Iran. And a young man sent it to me, being drafted into the Iranian army. And I treasure this single copy I have of it. And it reads this from right to left. Now, of course, my hands, this is right to left on the screen, I think. I'm not sure how it looks on the screen. It looks to me in my screen is the opposite direction. But it's interesting to think about things that look opposite to us And I recommend that all of you take some special time during Lent to study and read a bit, thoughtful presentations from a position that you don't agree with right now, or seems crazy, or you just didn't even open yourself up to. If you're Republican, do some other Democratic thinking. And if you're Democratic, go to Republican thinking. And then often you're going to find out these days that the differences don't cut that much. It can be between the elites and the poor. And it can be from the corporations and all of us who have to obey their world domination. It can come in such different ways now. And I'm finding my new friends cross all the older boundaries that I ever thought were set up, just as a by the way, Trina's preachment for today, for this week. But let me tell you some Lenten stories. When I was 18, I gave up 2 college scholarships and went and worked at a farm at Grailville. And I was in the laundry my first year. And then at Lent, 2 of us from that early class were brought out to be with a group of about 28 people over in a smaller farm that was on a hill. You have to imagine now. The road came in a kind of park that they leveled up enough to make 2 houses and a barn. And then above that was a steep hill. I mean, about like my hand is going, steep like that, really steep, where they had the lambs and the female goats and sheep. And then the houses, a little part of it. And then coming down was a hill that went down to a road that was next to a river. And the road to church had about 3 bars and and a railroad track and this big river and a ridge across it. That's where we were for Lent. Okay, I was given the job at the beginning to feed the sheep and the goat, the male sheep and goat, the 2 rams in the lower part of the capture. So I'd have to bring them food in a bucket. Okay, the Monday of the first week of Lent, the parallels in my life for this are just one of those things you never forget in your life. We read the scripture for that day, and that scripture is the key scripture that I hope I'll be worthy of for my funeral, actually. It's from Matthew 25, and it's the judge at the end of time will gather together and put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And he will say to those on his right, "Come, blessed of my Father, for when I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was sick, you ministered to me. When I was in prison, you visited me." And the just are going to say, "Well, when, Lord, did we do those things for you?" "Whenever you did it for one of the least of my brethren, you did it for me." And we won't go into what happens to the goats. He calls the goats, the ones on his left, and says, "Depart from me, because when I was hungry, you did not give me to eat." And they're going to say, "Well, when did we do that for you?" "Whenever you did not do it for one of the least of my brethren, you did not do it for me." And there's, in this tremendous judgment story, there's not a word about whether you're Catholic or Jewish or Hindu or nothing. It's how much love did you give in your life? And that's the heart of the matter, no matter what path we follow. It's good to have a path to follow. It keeps us sort of straight and gives us something to refer to. But it's not at the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is always kindness, love, compassion. And there's no way around that one. Okay, so here's my sheep story. I carried my bucket, one for the goat, male goat, the ram, and one for the sheep. The male goat was named Solomon, and you'll be able to see why. So I open the gate and I come in and I put the food of the sheep in front of him and put the food of the goat in front of him in a bucket. Immediately, Solomon runs over and butts the sheep out of the way, just out of the way, and eats the sheep's food. Well, I learned after that I had to hold the ram, the goat, till the sheep finished eating. After that, I learned that these are early morning chores, you understand. This is a sort of a rural farming situation. And later on that Lent, I also did the chickens, to feed the chickens, but this was my goats time. So I'll never forget that as long as I live, how the goats tend to take care of themselves. The sheep throughout scripture and in Isaiah and also in the New Testament follow the shepherd, the good shepherd. And it's interesting from an iconography point of view, the early Christians, just the cross and the death of Jesus on the cross was so immediate to them. They didn't have the crucifix really until the 10th century. They had the orante, sort of the image of the praying church, the praying image of someone praying like that. And then they had the good shepherd with a lamb on his shoulder. Those were the images in the catacombs of the early church. And so that's a very important moment of my life, that one. So the first week of Lent goes through many different lessons. And I just heard from 2 people this past week about an app that's called Hallow, like Halloween. It means holy, Hallow. You might just look it up. I just did that. I didn't get the app. I didn't do that yet because I can get my readings of the masses of the day from other sources too. But this one apparently has all these beautiful readings. And can you do it by voice? You can do it by somebody speaking. You can read it. You can do all this kind of under Hallow. And it has lots of interesting questions. And I plan to probably get it. But I usually work on this laptop here and not so much, not on my phone or some electronic. I don't work on my cell phone. I work on this app, not an app. I guess I could maybe get the app, but in any case, so that's my shepherd story, and it's what a lesson it is. What a lesson is to listen to the Master's voice, to listen to God, to be present before God, to be open. And this Sunday, first Sunday is going into the desert. The second Sunday is a transfiguration. And the very interesting juxtaposition. See behind me that my Abraham and Isaac story, again, the one that little statue, that's a small one, and the great big one I made, where the father is embracing his son with one hand, and they're looking at each other with great love. But the other hand has a sword in his hand or a knife. And yeah, that's my big one. Thank you, Scott, for putting it up again. So that's one I spent a year on, that big one. It's huge. It's huge. It's bigger than life size. And it's very puzzling, the whole meaning of the Abraham story. And it was, this Sunday was read, and maybe putting it with the transfiguration seems very strange for me, the transfiguration of Jesus, but maybe it's the end. And I like to think of this as the last time anybody could conceivably think that God could ask the sacrifice of a child. That was given up at that. Then God said, don't touch a hair of his head. Don't touch anything. And so that was the end of human sacrifice, because it was very common in that part of the world at that time. It was not an unusual thing. So but the gospel of that is one of those other beautiful days that on that first Lent of mine at Grailville, at the Grail. One of the leaders who had been there for a while took 3 of us walking up the hill, up a hill to a higher place. And the transfiguration was about Jesus doing that with 3 of his disciples and being transfigured and glowing white and shiny, and with Isaiah and Moses and talking about everything. And the 3 disciples were just terrified and said, should we build 3 tabernacles for the 3 of you? And then it disappeared, and Jesus was there and say this to no one, tell no one about this until the Son of Man is risen from the dead. Of course, they had no clue what that could possibly mean until, of course, after Jesus did die and rose again. And so that's this past Sunday. Now we go through the second week of Lent with many more stories, and probably I'll tell you some more next week. but this is a special time of hope. And I also want to share that this Arabic translation and this Hebrew one, I'm really thrilled that they seem to be coming to pass. And I got in terms of a good friend of mine who, with me, wanted to do this in about 15 years ago. We gathered. I'm not quite sure how long ago, but it was a long time ago. His name is Yeseskel Landau. Yeseskel Landau. And he's part of a group that I heard more about at the synagogue near me here in Montclair 2 Sundays ago, with representatives of a group called A Land for All. It's a rather complicated way of, they hope that a 2-state solution can be made. Of course, we have to stop the killing before we can think of what happens afterwards. So I'm into both groups, Jewish Voice for Peace and something to support what will happen afterwards, which is more my way of thinking, a land for all. It's much easier for me to think of that than anything, how to stop this violence. In a way, we should all take a little moment of silence to think about that. How do we stop violence? And how do we restore UNRWA, which has been falsely taken away by the accusations that a couple of people of this United Nations Relief and Organization work that is supplied for these refugees all over these 75 years, and in Gaza and everything, with human rights, with support, with medicine and food and tents and supplies. And now we and some other European countries have suspended our donations to them because of the accusations that some of the people might have helped on October 7th. But we don't know that for sure. That's not clear. So the call for love and compassion and stopping killing is all over the place and around us. And I object very much to my tax money going to be funding armaments. The only people winning right now are the arms manufacturers. So I think that's it for today. So let's all stand for peace and figure out what we can do about writing our legislature and getting negotiations going properly. So thank you for putting up with me again. Thanks a lot.